evening and welcome to Profiles. On tonight's show we have with us Amber Turner. She's a well-known local lawyer and she does an extensive amount of charity work here in Gibraltar. Amber, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Now, before we were being filmed, we were having a bit of a chat about where you were born and so on, so I want to share that with everybody because you weren't actually born in Gibraltar, even though you're well known here. Tell us a little bit about your family history and how you came to Gib.
OK, I'll start off by saying I do consider myself 100% Gibraltarian, but it's true I was born in London to Gibraltarian mother and an English father. My time there was actually quite interesting because at the age of 2.5, my mum introduced me to ballet at the Royal Academy of Ballet in Covent Garden. And from that age to the age of 6, I was actually quite involved in dance and also television work.
Bit of a child star then?
Yes, I always joke that my life's kind of started in reverse order, you know. Yes, I was encouraged by my ballet teacher at the time to audition for kiddie craft toys. And there was this advert coming up, which my mum took me to audition for. And I succeeded. So my mum was in shock because apparently the queues went round the building of the number of children who had turned up. But apparently I was quite a bit of a character and they liked me. So from then onwards, I went on to have my own agent with Wendy Wisby Agency. And I continued doing more adverts. I think I did around 11 or 12 adverts for Heinz Baked Beans and Campbell Soup and various others. Yes, it was interesting times.
You were famous in Gibraltar then from the TV, and then you actually moved back to Gib then when you were about 6, is that right?
That's right. Sadly, I suppose my parents separated at that time. I was supposed to start stage school in the UK. Given my already 3 or 4 years of television work and so on. But unfortunately, my mother had no choice really but to return to Gibraltar, where she had the support network of her family and her friends. And so at age 6, I returned with my younger brother, Aaron, who's actually on a flight out to represent Gibraltar. Yes, at the Island Games. I'm very proud of him. He's still in the basketball national team. So anyhow, digressing, but I'm very proud. So yeah, so we came back to Gibraltar and I started schooling here age 6. And so then from then onwards, I was still very much involved in the local dance scene.
That was your passion, really, because you did a lot of work here, didn't you, in terms of dance through your sort of childhood and teens? Yes,
I was very lucky, though, at the time. In Gibraltar, it was very exciting again. There were dance groups coming up. I started with Jennifer Seiler, who was a ballet teacher, moved on to, I think, the musical Annie with Mrs. Vassallo, and then Nelanie Shalaram, together with Annette Goodman and Silvana Linares, who's now Silvana Costa, created Eastern Promise. And Eastern Promise was something that changed, I think, the face of Gibraltar in terms of dance and performance. And certainly had a very positive impact on my life at that time.
And it was a very, like you said, it was very time-consuming. But somewhere through all of this, you then went to university and became a lawyer. Tell us, that wasn't a straightforward process either, because you initially started your degree with something else, didn't you?
That's right. I was in school here, obviously, until the age of 18, like most of us, and carried out my A-levels here. In the meantime, I was performing with the Gibraltar National Dance Team. So I had represented Gibraltar abroad, both in Switzerland and then in Germany later as well. And I'd also represented Gibraltar in Greece with some public relations work with Sonia Galton Associates. And so I suppose it's a bit of a strange thing that I ended up in this profession rather than maybe in performance studies. But again, at the time, whilst things were moving in Gibraltar, they hadn't really moved so fast in the sense that to catch up with the UK, in the sense that, for example, drama wasn't something that was offered past GCSEs and there was no performance studies A-level and so on. My teachers were encouraging me to go more through the academic route as opposed to the arts. And so who knows, you know, where I'd be today or what I'd be doing instead if I'd maybe pursued that passion. But instead, I ended up, first of all, doing a degree in surveying. There's a story behind that as well, and that's because I worked very closely with the Gibraltar Disability Awareness and Information Group with a very dear friend of mine, Eric Robotham, who's quite a local celebrity himself. And so I was, I suppose, very inspired by the work that that group were doing locally in raising awareness about accessibility and creating accessible environments, breaking down barriers of attitudes and so on. And so I thought, well, if I do a degree in surveying, I can focus on that angle, which really interested me. And my thesis, in fact, turned out to be about exactly that. It was about creating an accessible environment in Gibraltar. And during the time I was carrying out my dissertation, I was working with the architects who then went on to draw up the plans for the pedestrianisation of Main Street. For those who remember it, before the pedestrianisation, there were many changes that needed to be implemented. And I was very proud to be invited as a student in a student capacity, but to be part of that process.
It was fascinating. But then law, how did that come into the picture?
I think that looking back now, I suppose in hindsight, seeing my own parents break up and the hard work my mother had to put in to raise both my brother and I on her own, and sometimes I suppose the sense of injustice in the system, where sometimes mothers are left with very few resources, very little financial support, and to just get on with it. And so I suppose that maybe in hindsight there was always that sense of putting right or wrong in me. So I suppose that a lot of projects that I get involved in maybe have some elements of that, of let's raise awareness, let's try and break down this barrier, let's try and seek the truth, and let's try and do what's right. And so after the surveying degree, I decided I'd take the conversion year to law. And I don't think it's a coincidence I ended up as a family lawyer.
No, obviously not. The sort of element of you being able to right the wrongs of the world with that too. Because you do a lot of charity work, don't you? Even now still. Tell us a little bit about the charity work that you've been involved in.
Over the years, I've been very privileged. I've met some very interesting and very selfless characters, such as Naomi Quigley, who I mentioned earlier, who runs she founded the yoga centre in Gibraltar. I don't know if many people are aware, but the teachers of the yoga centre do not work for remuneration. All the money that's collected is collected for various charities. And so I've worked closely with Nelanie over the years. I've also worked closely with Jaime Felices, who but carried on working very hard through the last few decades, I think, with Cheshire Homes. So I've been invited to visit Cheshire Homes with the A-level students and be one of the tutors assisting there at the home on occasion. And I've liked to be involved in fundraising events as well. And we did that in the early days in the 1990s through the Gibraltar Students Association, through choreographing dancers, performing with teen productions, which is where I think Christian Santos began with his teen productions group, which was always really good fun. And aside from that, I've worked with Sonia Gold with Bosom Buddies for breast cancer, presented shows in the Alameda Gardens, and also with Mount Productions with Mark Pontovio. And again, Mark has been an excellent, influence in my life, who's been there for years working with the youth in Gibraltar and working to strive to make a better Gibraltar.
Do you think that there's more opportunities now? I mean, we mentioned about how you didn't have the opportunity to study, performing arts, but do you think there's more opportunities now? I mean, obviously we're seeing some amazing things with Jonathan Lutwich, and he's doing so well. Are you pleased to see that for the next generation?
So just so you mentioned Jonathan, because he's kind of my next little project. No, I won't say that. I couldn't say that. But I've been approached by Jonathan because I initially approached him when I watched him on Britain's Got Talent. I went to see him perform in London with my mum this last month. And unfortunately switched days, so I didn't get to see him. I spoke to Simon Cowell, though, and said, I'm here to support Jonathan from Gibraltar. There's another 30,000 Gibraltarians screaming and shouting for Jonathan. But I saw that he is a star in the making, and I believe he needs financial support now to get him access to the Joffrey School of Ballet in New York. So actually this week, I've been writing to various local companies and trusts to see if they will support him and provide him with that money. What I do behind the scenes is that sometimes I help certain organisations or projects take off. One example is Raul Santos from La Roca, the documentary film La Roca, when he needed funding to pay the archives so that he could release his DVD, his film. I managed to help him secure that funding. And with other projects, I've kind of done the same from time to time. It must come from that feeling of, oh, I didn't do it myself, so I'll just have to help others,
to do it.
Get there, yes, and empower them in the system in whatever way I can.
Well, you're really active and you seem to have, you know, so much going on all the time. What do you do in sort of to relax?
Oh, gosh, that's a good question. I don't really have too much time to relax, that's the honest truth. I try to say no to people who come and ask, but I find it very, very difficult. And I also have the feeling that if God, the universe, whatever, has given me certain abilities and certain resources, then it's my duty really to do something about it and to help. And if people come across my path or I come across theirs, then I believe that it is a good thing to do. So this year I was just asked to join the Gibraltar Women's Association committee. And I said, OK, I'll join the committee as a member, but just as a member. And then they said, no, we want you to be the chairperson. No, I won't be the chairperson. Yes, you will. OK, then. So I'm really bad at saying no. But at the same time, as soon as I say yes, I know that my heart's in it and I feel, you know, that it's going to be great, that we're going to have a good time and many good things will come of it.
It most certainly will. I want to hear more about that in part 2, so we're just going to go to a short break now.
OK, thank you.
Join us in part 2. We'll be hearing more from Amber Turner.